Ready.
Hi, I'm Richard Carlton with drypractice.com. This video is a response to all the emails that we're getting from our users and testers of the front site Dry Practice app. And what we have is a live broadcast with a number of our testers who have been asking questions about the app and specifically asking about help videos. And so we wanted to respond to those questions. Specifically today we have Miles. Hi, Miles. We also have Jeff, right? And we also have Zach. Now, I know, Jeff, you've been to Front Site before, right, Jeff?
I have, yes.
And the other two guys have not been to Front Site yet, so you two are testing an app that is interesting because you've not been to Front Site before, and you actually have some questions, and I know Jeff doesn't have those questions, so it's kind of an interesting scenario here. First question, I guess, goes to Miles. Let's dive into Miles. What's your question, Miles?
Pretty basic. Just how would I draw my weapon?
Yeah, and this is a good question. It's hard to cover in 30 seconds because, well, first off, Front Sight, the idea of drawing a weapon, it's, people, the Old West, that's the quick draw, right? How do you get the weapon presented? Front Sight talks about presenting your weapon. It's in a holster. You present it out so you can use the weapon. It's called a weapon presentation. Front Sight uses a 5-count presentation to teach you how to take the weapon from its storage on your hip and bring it out and point it in at a target. The problem is it's not something that we can teach in 2 or 3 minutes here on a video. The reality is that as you bring the weapon out, and I can show you the 5-count presentation, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the weapon out. I'm going to check to make sure I have an empty weapon. In fact, I have an empty magazine here. I'm going to go and put this in my pocket. I have an empty chamber, empty magazine well. I'm going to release the slide forward. I have an empty weapon. What's important to note is that what goes into a presentation is a grip of the weapon, how you grab the weapon. It's the isometric tension of the weapon. It's the sight alignment. It's the trigger control. It's stance. There's a lot of things that go into the handling of a weapon system. And the actual presentation part, the mechanics of grabbing and pushing the weapon out, is a small part of it. And so asking how you present the weapon, it's a valid question. I'm going to show that to you right now. But understand that Front Sight spends the first day and a half easy just getting to the point where you understand the basic mechanics of sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, stance, grip, all these basic concepts, so you're competent with the handling of a semi-automatic pistol or revolver if you're going to bring that to Front Sight. Let me go ahead and show this to you, the 5-count presentation. Step 1 of a presentation is, your hands will be at your side. You'll have some sort of situation that develops. Your first step, count 1 of a 5-count presentation, is a firing grip. This hand right here, and I'm going to go and turn this way, is the firing grip with your finger down the side of the weapon. The support hand is here, flat along the side of your stomach. The reason you want it right here is that you don't want it out here floating because your weapon's going to be out here, and pretty soon you don't want it to be pointed through your hand where you might poke a hole in it with a bullet. So your support hand is here, firing hand is here, finger down the side where it's going to stay out of the way. Count 2 is where your weapon is going to come straight up. It's going to actually come up pretty high. And the reason is that count 3, you're going to rotate your weapon down this way, okay? And your finger, notice, is right here. Some people make the mistake of trying to find that trigger right here, and that can be a very deadly mistake. They have people all the time, industry-wide, who will fire the gun. They get excited. They'll shoot the gun right here, boom, and they put the bullet right down the side of their leg here, quite by accident. So then what happens is you're at count 3 right here. You're going to drive the weapon forward with your firing grip. Your support side hand is going to drive out here and find your weapon. And as you're driving, becomes count 4. So count 3 is here, count 4 is out here, and as you get from count 4 to count 5, your trigger finger is going to find the trigger, and then at count 5, you're going to be pointed in at your target with your finger on the trigger. Now, the idea is that you're not necessarily going to shoot the target. Now, of course, if it's a hostile situation, it's a crisis, you may have to make that decision. Of course, the number one rule in a gunfight is don't get in a gunfight. Of course, if you have to and you're going to break the trigger and take the shot, you take the shot, boom, boom, or whatever you need to do. The weapon comes down to the ready, and you're going to do these after-action drills where you're looking around for other adversaries, and you're going to be moving to make sure that you're not going to get shot at by someone behind you. Okay? So very important. Okay? Now, what's important to understand here is that Front Sight's going to spend days teaching you and explaining this information to you. And part of the purchase of the Dry Practice app, you get this 2-day certificate that allows you to come out to Front Sight and take a 2-day handgun class. You're going to learn all these skills at that class. Front Sight also, of course, offers the 4-day handgun class, and all this material is covered there at greater depth. So either way, you're going to learn this material. So once again, 5-count presentation. It's more than what I can teach you immediately right here, but you get kind of the gist of what's going on. Now, Jeff, you've been to Front Sight before. You've seen this material. General concept, it's something that's hard to teach in 5 minutes, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. It takes a little while to teach and then get these concepts down.
Now, you took the 4-day class, and I know that you enjoyed it a lot. In fact, you can't wait to go back out again. In fact, you've been talking to people and trying to get a group of people together to go back out. 5-count by day 4 you were getting comfortable with the concept of that presentation, right? So
yeah, that's correct. We start off really basic, going count by count with the instructor, and by a few days in, day 3, day 4, we don't need to go count by count anymore. We're very comfortable with the technique, and we're able to continue on with the rest of the teaching.
Okay, so that's good. So next question from the folks here.
I'm Zach, and my question is, how do you do the malfunction drills?
Yeah, and this follows along the same line of the issue with the 5-count presentation. The malfunctions, and this gets back into this idea for those of you who don't have a lot of experience with weapon systems. If your entire exposure to shooting has maybe been shooting a .22 rifle with an uncle somewhere, and maybe some experience with modern warfare in a video game somewhere where the guns go bang, 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 and they never break or malfunction, then in real life, someone needs to explain to you that even great weapon systems like the Glock or maybe an XD or something like that, these things do break or malfunction. It's very rare, and to me it's a little disconcerting when my Glock breaks, but it can happen. And so you need to be prepared to handle the emergency procedures for clearing a malfunction on a weapon system to make sure you're still in the fight if something happens. But it's not something that we can teach in 2 or 3 minutes. So it's important to understand that that's also part of the curriculum out at Front Sight. Now, there are a couple options for learning these materials besides going out to a full class at Front Sight. Front Sight has what they call at-home training. And at-home training is where the ambassador students, which is kind of their top-tier students out at Front Sight, typically they're students that have been out to Front Sight for a number of classes, they offer courses that are half-day dry practice courses in your local community. In areas, in cities across the United States, they offer half-day courses where they'll bring you in and teach you the basics of weapon handling. Now, they don't teach you the 5-count presentation, but they teach you almost everything else besides that. They teach you the basic idea of loading the weapon. They teach you the idea of chamber checking. They teach you the idea of emergency reloads, where if you have a magazine in the weapon and you're firing and it locks back, they teach you the idea of checking the weapon, of ejecting the magazine and reloading the weapon. They teach you the idea of a type 1, 2, or 3 malfunction, all these types of things, and that's a half-day dry practice training class. And of course, dry practice meaning that you're doing it without any live ammunition, so there's no real firing. Every time you pull the trigger, you're going to get a click, not a bang or boom, which makes the shooting very inexpensive. It also makes sure that you don't need a real live range like what we have here. So anyway, That's FrontSight's at-home training, a very valuable program, fairly inexpensive. Of course, all this material is also covered at great depth in FrontSight's dry practice manuals, and we'll put a link to that here. But the dry practice manuals are designed to go with the dry practice app that we have that's shipping that you've been testing. And the dry practice manual is the reference material where you can go look up type 1, type 2, type 3 malfunction. What is the exact 5-count presentation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what happens if you have a 5-count presentation from concealment? Well, count 1 is where you throw your garment, your jacket out of the way, and you get a firing grip. So count 1's a little more involved if you have a jacket, or if you have a sweatshirt, it's you got to pull the sweatshirt up out of the way and then get a firing grip. So there's all those additional mechanics are covered in the dry practice reference. That is a reference that goes with the dry practice software that we have. The manual itself is a little bit on the dry side. I mean, you open up as a great reference, but the manual itself doesn't inspire you to go out and train. The dry practice app on the phone or the pad, you get it going, it inspires you to put it down into practice and to train. And that's what the app is good for. The manual, the reference, is there to explain to you that if you're doing something wrong, is to explain you the technical intricacies of what a perfect 5-count presentation should look like, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what that's for. So as you bring the weapon back, you know, all these things that go into it, you know, and you're not drifting the support side hand during the presentation, right? All these mechanics that go into it, things that you learn during the course at FrontSight, or things that you can learn at the at-home training. So important to note. So if there's no more questions, I think that about covers it for one of our first Google Hangouts, and covers some of the things that you need to know when you're doing your testing. If we don't have any other questions, I think we'll wrap things up here. I do appreciate everyone who's watched. We'll put links and information. Make sure you share this video with everyone, and check the description on our YouTube page here for links to the at-home training for FrontSight, links for the Dry Practice app, and also links for the Dry Practice manual, which is the benchmark reference for dry practice for FrontSight students. I'm Richard Carlton for drypractice.com, and I'll see you next time at the range.